I want to talk about the way that medicine and the media are colluding to tell us a story that isn't making us healthier or more empowered to control our bodies or able to find our innate beauty. Rather, it's a story that's making us sicker, a story that's making us more fearful, self-hating, a story that's eating us from the inside out. You know, I want to say that absolutely, we doctors often view patients and their bodies one at a time. And of course it's important to think about people's eating habits or heart health or smoking habits, but it's also important to understand that we all, patients, doctors all, live in contexts. We live in cultures. And part of the culture that we are living in today is a toxic body culture that is literally eating us from the inside out, or rather eating us from the outside in, probably I should say. And so, as we're talking about health and wellness today, I really do want to think about health from the inside out. And I want to talk a little bit about medicine's contributions to toxic body culture first, and then touch on some issues in media. And I think it's interesting because we somehow assume that medicine and science are somehow objective or devoid of culture. And of course, that's not true. Science is just as much rooted in culture as anything else. And I think that that's easiest to see in historical images. So I'm going to show you some historical public health images now. So, it is of course important to take your penicillin if you've had syphilis, but this 1940s image is just as much about constructions of American masculinity at the time, right? Urban versus rural, urban versus rural, let's see here. Pull your stuff up by the bootstraps versus suit wearing and dissipation and disability. This image is just as much about servicemen protecting themselves from VD during World War II as it is about the risks in the 1950s that people saw with women's unfettered sexuality and the threat that women's unfettered sexuality presented to the nation, individual men's bodies, and even the war, right? You can't beat the Axis if you get VD. She may look clean, but she's not. Similarly, this TB poster, French TB poster, associates contagion, risk, death, disease with who? The poor, immigrant populations, even disabled people. You see that boy with the crutch there. And so we see here that medicine tells us as much about how to think about other people as it does about diseases. And so it's not that surprising when we look, for instance, at this poster which tells us to cut our portions, to understand that it's telling us how to think about bodies of size. Here in this New York City anti-obesity ad, this man is not only headless, faceless, voiceless, so P.S., his leg was actually photoshopped out of this image to imply that it was amputated from diabetes. How different is this posturing than those American ideals about able-bodied mobility, right? Agency, self-control. Here, these images from a Georgia anti-obesity campaign similarly reinforce a notion that, hey, we should shame the fat kid and shame his parents too. And yet we know that shame is a really ineffective motivator for behavior change. And if this isn't public health playing into bullying, I don't know what is. You don't even have to be an anti-obesity ad to get in on the act. Here, PETA UK is telling us that feeding our kids meat is akin to child abuse. Now, whatever your feelings about vegetarianism may be, let's realize here that what is going on is that we are pressuring parents to produce perfect, desirable, ideal children. What these images don't do is give us any sort of structural analysis about the availability of food in urban areas. We're not shaming, for instance, the food companies who are creating GMO-produced foods or using, right, corn syrups in their foodstuffs, but rather we are shaming and blaming individuals and upholding ideas about individual responsibility over structural change, and importantly about desirable bodies, and not necessarily healthier ones. As a pediatrician, a professor of narrative medicine at Columbia, and a writer for venues like Adios Barbie, a pro-body image website, I worry about things like young people's self-esteem in the face of such messages. And I worry about the fact that we are engaging in acts of hate disguised as concern over weight. And in doing so, we are creating, not solving, public health problems, from eating disorders to bullying to violence against women and race-based violence. So for the rest of my time, I'm going to read you pieces of an essay called Look Like a Magazine Cover. And it's coming out in a volume called Break These Rules. And that's the rule I would like our young people to break today. So I have a dirty little secret. And because I don't know you, I'll tell you. I am addicted to images. Images on billboards, in magazines, like a moth to a flame, I gravitate to the colors and shapes in ads and advertisements. Images of clothes and bags, jewelry and shoes, images of people doing made-up things like drinking fake drinks or laughing at silent jokes. Ha ha ha. I'm addicted to unrealistic situations like men and women hanging out in bathtubs or beautiful people inexplicably feeding giraffes from architecturally impossible spiral staircases. I am endlessly drawn to these images, even though I know they're bad for me. They're bad for us. In the words of Jean Kilbourne, ads sell more than products. They sell values, they sell images, they sell concepts of love and sexuality, of success, and perhaps most importantly, of normalcy. They tell us who we are and what we should be. When I was a teenager, the power of such images in my life was clear. I loved the eye candy, the beauty and desirability I saw around me. But in turn, I hated myself. There I am, way in the back, in the 8th grade. When I was a teenager, I was convinced I was intolerably ugly. Everywhere I looked, faces and bodies were blonde, tall, thin, images I thought I was supposed to aspire to. Nowhere was there somebody who looked like me. There I am in my senior year play, looking decidedly foreign. The ability to see myself in my environment led me to the sense that I was hideous, socially unacceptable, and that perhaps, since I couldn't see myself in the world around me, perhaps I should make myself invisible. Maybe I didn't have the right to live in the world at all. As if I was a rabbit frozen in the path of the wolf, there was a part of my heart that froze up too, the part tasked with loving myself, and it took me years to defrost it. I'm not blaming images alone. Media is the message and the messenger. Sexism, racism, you name it, the media didn't invent these oppressions, but it does participate in perpetuating them. Consider race. There is a spate of whitewashing on book covers and album covers. The character in this story called Liar is described looking like this, the woman here, but the first book cover looked like that. Here is an almost unrecognizable Beyoncé on an album cover. Here is an Indian model and actress who is actually suing Elle magazine for making her look like this when she actually looks like that. Right? So much lighter skinned and haired. A bizarre counterpoint to these kinds of images are Caucasian models being made to look Asian, Native American. And yet, I don't think that these acts of cultural appropriation are actually respectful. And I don't think they change the message that being lighter skinned is actually more desirable, unless, of course, you can just wash it off. Or consider size. There are 3 billion women who don't look like supermodels, only 8 who do. Despite the health at every size movement, fat studies and fat activism, the truth remains that media images of svelte, thin celebrities are contributing to a toxic body culture in the minds of our young people, in our minds. When even Jessica Alba is photoshopped to look thinner, bigger-breasted, smaller-waisted, what hope is there for the rest of us? Or this model, a size 4 in real life, photoshopped to a size that is incomprehensible. We're inconsistent with probably life. Or consider the way that women are disembodied, right? Only portrayed in parts. People like Jean Kilbourne, here's a trigger warning, have consistently shown that these sorts of images of women contribute to violence against us in real life. What about the way that even powerful women are talked about for their hairstyles or their bust line? It only reinforces the message that we women should care about what's outside, not what's inside, not our brains, not our intellect, not our personalities. So what do we do about it? I'll tell you what we don't do. We don't put our kids on scales in school anymore, right? Sure, a pediatrician should follow weight or BMI, but a 9-year-old being told in school that she should measure her self-worth based on a number, right? Unacceptable. That is not good medicine. Instead, let's give our young people podiums and microphones. Here's Julia Bloom, who petitioned 17 Magazine to stop photoshopping images and got 80,000 online signatures. And she's coming after all the rest of the fashion magazines next, right? 8th grader. What else do we not do? Let's stop photoshopping images, people. I don't know what this photoshopped image is telling us. Like, look at that cute kid. She looks like a crazy chipmunk, right? Let's stop doing stuff like that. Let's instead start putting warning labels on magazines, right? Warning, do not read or open this magazine because of its photoshopping, because it will lower your self-esteem and raise unknown insecurities. It is hazardous to your health. Open at your own risk. And let's please, please change, smash this fat-phobic, toxic body culture that allows NYU professors to say, dear obese PhD applicants, if you don't have the willpower to stop eating carbs, you don't have the willpower to do a dissertation. Truth. Let's instead say, not buying it. Let's use our social media towards body-embracing directions, not body-harming directions. And so finally, maybe what we need is a change in our visual culture. Not buying it. Let's talk about collective action as opposed to individual bodies. Let's talk about wellness, not appearance. Let's talk about radical self-love, body acceptance, and not body hate. Gorgeous the way you are, treat yourself. Unbowed by convention, treat yourself. Smart and strong, treat yourself. I end here with the words of the most fabulous comedian Margaret Cho, a little bit naughty words, sorry, people on YouTube watching, who reminds us, you know when you look in the mirror and you think, oh, I'm so fat, I'm so old, I'm so ugly. Don't you know that's not your authentic self? But that is billions on billions of dollars in advertising, magazines, movies, billboards, all geared to make you feel like shit about yourself. So you will take your hard-earned cash and spend it at the mall on some turnaround cream that doesn't turn around shit. When you don't have self-esteem, you will hesitate before you do anything in your life. You will hesitate to go for the job you really want to go for. You will hesitate to ask for a raise. You will hesitate to call yourself an American. You will hesitate to report a rape. You will hesitate to defend yourself when you are discriminated against for your race, your sexuality, your size, your gender. You will hesitate to vote. You will hesitate to dream. For us to have self-esteem is truly a revolution, and our revolution is long overdue. So let me just repeat that. For us to have self-esteem is truly a revolution. Let's get rid of those girls, right? And our revolution is long, long overdue. Thank you very much.